Hey YouTube, Awesome Writer here. Welcome to my review for King-ohger episode 11. And man, what a great episode. This was our debut of our 6th Ranger officially, Jeremy Baramy, hashtag the good place for life. But we actually showed restraint and did not debut his costume yet. I mean, obviously we know what his costume looks like, but narratively it's a nice change of pace to have some actual sort of slower pacing to sort of get you into things, which I really appreciate. But let's get to that later because that kind of happened at the end of the episode. We start the episode with a narration that actually narrates the events of the King-ohgers reforming, like the second 2.0 legend. Like last week they made a big deal about how, you know, we had the King-ohger legend of old, and then the King-ohgers reformed the three shoe god combination with all the mecha, again kind of echoing history as the legend returning. And so this week we actually recap that instead of the original legend, which is actually a nice touch, especially since our 6th Ranger is the narrator. So I thought that was kind of cool. The villain guy who supposedly got blown up last week is obviously alive. Basically, they're like, everything's going according to plan because we wanted this to happen. Of course we did. It's not even Evil's final plan yet. And then we have our mysterious stranger showing up, our cloaked 6th Ranger with his like man in the iron mask spider thing on, and you clearly get the vibes of like, oh, there's a lot going on with him. You know, he's got stuff involved in both camps, and it sets the stage for him and his personality a bit, and the mystery of him that will play throughout this episode. Meanwhile, of course, they're like, yep, Rackley's totally took advantage of this situation. He's taking credit for everything. He's interrogating the Black Ranger. He's like, look, I know you know more. Gear's body's totally out there. And, you know, they're basically playing with each other's poker faces. That sounded weird. But you know what I mean. Like, Rackley's clearly knows the Black Ranger probably knows something. Black Ranger knows he knows something. It's actually a pretty good scene, and it was one of the times that he wasn't over the top and didn't annoy me. Black Ranger, I mean. But I do like his character in the sense that I think he's one of the most like smart and cunning and opportunist. Like he clearly is always thinking about what's best for him and his kingdom, and I find that to be at least interesting. But it was a good scene. But he ultimately convinces Rackley's to throw a funeral for Gira for political purposes, and that's when we enter this sequence, which is the more entertaining sequence of the episode, which is the Rangers discussing like their plan to have Gira pop out of the coffin and reveal he's alive and that he controls King-ohger to expose Rackley's as a fraud. And the funniest part about it is they each have a scenario of how they want him to do it, and there are all these comedic scenarios, and so they're hit and miss, but mostly I found it to be a funny and endearing sequence. Like, Gira first does it like a zombie. I think Yellow's is like kind of an angelic impression. My favorite, though, is Blue's idea of him coming back as a robot, and it's like a generic robot like outfit, and the robot voice Gira does very much reminds me of Ixabel from Kiva. It's like, so it was a funny sequence. But the funniest part about that sequence was actually at the end, when Rita's getting ready to leave, and they're talking about the importance of stories and crafting narratives and how it can be an escape and helping to, inspire dreams. And Yellow's like, of course, there's this program like the Puffin Show or whatever that airs here. Have you ever heard of it? And of course, it's the show Rita's stuffed animal is based off of, and like they're pretending they don't know what Yellow's talking about. And then as Yellow starts describing a plot of the episode to like give her an example, Rita storms out, and then they have one of their stuffed animals and like, they don't want spoilers. I thought that was really funny. Honestly, for the most part, I enjoyed that entire sequence because they had some entertaining, funny bits, especially with the Rita stuff, tying it to that interesting aspect of their character. But also, it was nice to see them interact in a scene that felt like a classic scene of the Sentai team interacting. I really do like how this series is very different in the terms of the way it's structured and the way the characters interact, but sometimes it's nice to have a scene of your core cast of characters interact, which is something that's a little bit harder to come by in a traditional sense in this series and in Dawn Brothers, so I really liked that. We get to the funeral, and, Gira's about to pop out, and I like that moment when Yanma, like, tries to key him up. He's like, Rackley, you'd like to hear the sound of your own voice. That would almost raise the dead, or something like that, and he, like, looks at the grave like, ah, thank you. Gira can't get out. The henchmen are trying to open it, Gira's trying to open it, they can't get out, and you can clearly see there's webbing on it. They zoom in, so he got Spider-Man. They're like, No Way Home, see it in theaters June 2nd. There was like a little sticker there, it was weird. Our mysterious stranger shows up, and he can like freeze people by snapping his fingers. It's like the Thanos snap, but with freezing. And he takes off with the coffin, and he like bounces all around, carrying it all around. And he clearly has some sort of otherworldly strength and ability that the other Rangers don't have, which probably ties into his connection to the Bugnarok. But when he lets Gira out, our introduction to like what type of character he is in regards to dialogue is a conversation about poop. Like he starts talking about poop. I'm like, what the hell, dude? Where is this going? And he ultimately comes up with this point of like, because poop can tell you something about your overall health, it's a storyteller of sorts. And I'm like, this is like the weirdest possible way you could set the stage for his like point of view about stories. And he's like, but are the Bugnarok really our enemy? And then he points to the Bugnarok of the week attacking. As a side note, I do appreciate how different all the monsters are. You can really tell in general that Sentai got a little bit more budget this year in a lot of ways, but we've had some sort of samey monsters in series like King-ohger. To be fair, Dawn Brothers had some different monsters, but this series, all the monsters have been very distinctly different and well designed. But anyway, Gira rushes into battle. He thinks he defeats him, but he really infected him with this like pollen thing that separates the Megazord, allowing the villains to steal the 3 core shoe gods, and they're like, at last, the prophecy! But then Ranger is like, nope, wrong prophecy. This is my prophecy. I used you to gather all 3 of these shoe god stones so I could unlock this key to unlock my face. And so his like mask comes off, and it turns out somehow, which I'm sure we'll find out, his Morpher Changer sword was turned into this mask, which is a super cool idea. I like the mask in general. It was a really cool, like, just Man in the Iron Mask spider bit, and we reveal his full persona, which we've seen, get a little taste for his character, and he's like, Jeremy Bear Me, baby! And he talks about how he's just a storyteller, and then all we really see from him is like, yep, this is the actor, this is what he looks like, this is his personality, and he uses the little Venom, gun, the spray paint gun. And I haven't, like, watched any of the early toy demos, if there is any of the Changer, so I don't know what the voice is like, but I love the voice for the gun. It's really badass. But it's a really cool intro, and he like blows up the fake body of Death Narok or whatever. He's like, fake, so that kind of sets up that he probably has numerous decoys or something. And then he disappears, and that's the cliffhanger. And I really like that. I honestly thought he was going to transform, and that was going to be the cliffhanger, so we can be like, hey look, here's the Ranger, buy the merchandise and stuff. But we actually just debuted the character. I can't say how much I appreciate about that this episode, because, Sentai can often be formulaic and rushed-paced in regards to the toys, and I was so appreciative that this episode had a really nice build of his character and the mystery of him, his vibe, his personality, his point of view, and, then we actually just debut the character himself. We get a little taste of his merchandise. That sounded weird. But you know what I mean. I love that they showed restraint in not having his morph. Obviously, we all know what the suit looks like, but narratively, I love that for the flow of it. And he also reveals that he's the narrator at the end, saying, like, this is the story of the 5 king gods, and me! And the real protagonist, me. I really like this episode because I really didn't have any overt negatives, and I thought it was a very well-balanced Sentai episode with some great action. It furthered the plot, furthered the mystery. We had some really fun classic Sentai interactions, some funny beats, and I want to give him extra points just for showing restraint with his 6th Ranger. And I gotta say, so far I really like him. I think he has the potential to be annoying with his performance, but for the most part he's not like a badass, but he's kind of like a smarmy badass. He reminds me of like a more snide Waz, but with a little mix of another character I can't quite think of at the moment. But he definitely, obviously, with the storyteller aspect, reminds me of Waz. But I like him so far, and I'm definitely glad that he doesn't seem to be a cartoon, and I hope he doesn't become a cartoon bit, because I'm really enjoying what we've seen so far. I'm really stoked for next week's episode, but this was a strong next episode after that 10-episode mini-arc, kicking off a new set of stories as well as continuing the existing ones. But what did you think of our first impression of Jeremy? Let me know in the comments as always. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell so you can get notifications for all my videos. Awesome Writer, signing out.